There was a little snippet that came from Pat Ragazzo, and that being Spencer Torkelson, as the Mets are interested in possibly trading for him. Now, this would be a buy low, obviously, considering the year that he just had. We all agree that Brett Baty should not be in this opening day lineup, and even if he is, they probably will find a way to somewhat operate with that, because we've seen Stearns move around things during the season. The possibility of trading for Spencer Torkelson, in this way, they would be pivoting with more torque. Andrew? No? Huh? That's no?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, come on. It's good. You can't tell me it's not good. Anyways, the Mets are considering a trade for Tigers first baseman Spencer Torkelson. He was the number 1 overall pick in the 2020 MLB draft. He's really struggled at the major league level to gain that consistency. In little spurts, we have seen the potential that he does have. From him on draft day, he was a 60-hit tool, 70 power, which I would say that overall in those tools, it seems like he has showed those so far at the major leagues. But when you look at it from last year, it was a disaster for him. And for a majority of the season, he was in AAA. He slashed 219, 295, 374. He had 10 home runs, 37 runs batted in, 92 weighted runs created plus, and only 381 plate appearances at the major league level. Now, one of the redeeming parts of his 2024, he did post a 125 weighted runs created plus. That is 25% over the league average in offensive production since he was recalled from August 17th. Still not at the level that you expect from a guy like Spencer Torkelson, but overall, he did finish the season strong. Average to maybe slightly below average percentiles in exit velocity, hard hit rate. His quality of contact was not great. He does not chase that much. Lots of swings and misses, though. He's 25 years old. He would have control through 2028. Andrew, you know about Spencer Torkelson pretty well. It's been rough for him. Could it be a change of scenery thing that he needs? Would this be something that you would consider, or would you consider other options?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting idea because again, this is a former number 1 overall pick that was hyped and has all the major records at his school and college. He's slaughtered throughout the minor league system, and then again, it's just he can't find his footing in the big leagues. And again, that's problems with young players. Yes, we get blessed with Sotos and Acuñas and juniors and guys like that. Not everybody comes right away in his second year of their major league career hitting an MVP conversation. So again, he's like most young players. He just hasn't been able to get his footing in the big leagues. The Tigers also, again, kind of positionally squeezing him out. I mean, they have Colt Keith. They obviously bring in Gleyber Torres, Jace Young, Trey Sweeney, who was brought over, obviously, with Javi Baez still sitting there probably on the bench. But you saw them be the surprise team in the second half to make a playoff run with that young infield. And they bring in Gleyber Torres this offseason. So if you're telling me you're getting a guy with tons of team control, and even it's another, and I know this is not what fans want to hear, but if Stearns' plan is to have a conglomeration of a Mark Vientos, Brett Baty, let's say you add a guy like we talked about last year, maybe Paul DeYoung, Yoel Moncada, and find a guy, or if it's Spencer Torkelson, can you get a league average hitter to the All-Star break? That probably is what his plan is. Can a conglomeration of that give you a 700 OPS and some production? Maybe that's the plan. Maybe not. Maybe there's a massive trade. But if you're telling me I can add Spencer Torkelson, put him at first base, I can keep Mark Vientos for now at third base, because I think once you shift Mark to first, there really is no going back. You can say, if Vlad Guerrero's different next year, maybe. But I think once you move him to first, you shouldn't be moving him back. So if you're telling me it keeps Vientos at third, who maybe can get another year of development at third base, and you give me a flyer with a guy like Spencer Torkelson, and even if you bring him in, it doesn't necessarily take you out of that class next year, first baseman. Yes, if he comes over and hits and you see that number 1 pick, hell, you got him for 4 years making nothing. If he sucks, it's not going to stop you from going if you want Vlad Guerrero Jr. next year. It's just another upside play, which David Stearns has done all upside in the rotation, and he really hasn't done it with the bats. He's been obviously more run prevention when you've seen the bats he's added, and obviously Juan Soto. I love it. If, again, the price to acquire, I know I've seen it all over the place. Oh, it's a Brett Baty. It is a Brett Baty same situation. I don't think it's a flip for Brett Baty 1-for-1, because, again, if they're already punching out a corner infield, why would they want another corner infield? I think this is probably in a comp that I kind of threw together. Maybe it's a Blade Tidwell, and then you maybe get one of their relievers for Torque and a reliever for a Blade Tidwell, something like that. because their pitching factory, yes, they have Schoolball, they have Jackson Jobe. That's the kind of like mid-teen prospect for them. I don't think again Beatty they don't need Beatty. They have their Beatties, Jace Jungs, and obviously they brought in Gleyber
Yeah.
Torres. They got Trey Sweeney. They had Cole Keith now playing first base, which I don't love. Like, I'd rather just have Torque at first base and use Keith as a versatile switch utility base, but they want to give that guy first base, sure. So I don't think they're going to be, oh, give me Brett Beatty. I just think you can obviously trade Beatty and a different thing. But again, if you're getting me another upside piece that shouldn't call, again, Blade Tidwell, we've kind of, his up and down. We still think he can be a back end starter. But again, are you willing to make the risk for a
Yeah.
potential back end starter for a guy that has hit 30 home runs in the major leagues? And you look at his baseball savant page, he would have hit 37 home runs at Citi Field compared to his 31 he hit in Comerica. So you take that guy out of the cavernous Comerica. I'm not saying again he didn't have a great year, but that could also help a psyche. Another thing, I guess it's getting a change of scenery. Maybe New York isn't that spot. You
Yeah,
really don't want to have a
that's
guy
yeah.
who's in Detroit, which nobody watched before unless the last month of the year, and you're going to be bringing in a guy who, again, is not proven anything. And this is the change of scenery. I think it would be a softer landing spot for him in his career to go elsewhere. But again, if this is a guy that Stearns sees something in, because again, there was nothing. It was just, oh yeah, randomly now the Mets are interested in Regazzo, who was actual, guy we trust compared to some stupid guys on the internet. Like, this is a reputable source saying like, oh yeah, the Mets have some interest. I would put a little more appeal to it because again, Stearns has said outright kind of, this is something maybe I like.
And Frank, I'll swing it over to you because I think that there is a little bit of concern if you plug Torque in here because he has not really proven much and it's been a rough go for him since he was called up to the major leagues after being the number 1 overall pick. I think the upside is definitely there. The thought of it is like, replacing the Pete Alonso production, like I said, with Juan Soto. And now all you just need to do is bring in a bat, either has upside or could be a convincing piece at first base to move Mark Vientos back to third, take Beatty out of the equation. Would this be something that you consider? Would you go into other outlets? Because, for me, this wouldn't be the number 1 here, but I understand if they want to do something like this.
I feel like with this point in the off season, as many guys are off the board, like we said, the options are getting a little limited, and it's not every day that a number 1, like literally number 1 draft pick becomes available. Like that was a guy that was number 1 pick in like the last 4 to 5 years. Like maybe a guy that was number 1 pick like a decade ago. Like sure, that guy becomes available, but not one like from 4 to 5 years ago. Now, yes, pandemic, things like that, whatever. But I feel like that's just not something that happens very often. And I'd rather take a shot on a guy that's 25 compared to a guy that's 35. So I feel like we talk about upside, there's much more there. And you know what? He's not going to become the number 1 draft pick if you get him. But man, like we said, I feel like of the guys that we are out there, he has probably the best chance to be like we're talking again league average. Because we said, okay, Soto replaces Pete in the lineup, but just give me another complimentary bat. And Torkelson, he has the ability to provide that. He has the potential to provide that. And I would rather take a shot on Torkelson than I would Beatty. That's definitely, that just makes a ton of sense. Now, giving up Blade, don't love it, but Blade's not a guarantee either. He's had, I made my videos past week, like he's had his good moments, his bad moments. So it's risky, and especially when we're talking about starting pitching, like that's not, like I don't love trading starting pitchers if I'm not getting a guarantee back. But I feel like with the reality of the situation, like Andrew said, the potential with the team control, that's a big thing like we always talk about, is that if you could find those really talented players with team control at a low number, it goes a long way when you already have a huge payroll, so that it allows you to do a lot of other things. So if they're able to pull that off and he's solid, it could be a huge win. So it's like medium risk, high reward, or you know what I mean? It's like it's one of those kind of things. Like it's not low risk, but it's also not high risk either. It's like kind of medium risk and with a potential of a really high reward.
Yeah, I think that there's a look as to, giving leeway to the young guys, of course, but when it comes to looking at it from the Spencer Torkelson type of thing, or whether there's somebody else out there that they make a trade for, that has upside and can remain flexible, has control. If you're fully moving on from Alonso, you're trying to build a little bit of a bridge to Ryan Clifford. That's what you're looking at. Because again, yes, we have Ryan Clifford. He's not in the equation right now. Ryan Clifford still needs to play like maybe another year, maybe another half year. He's still young. He still has things that he needs to work on. There's power there. There's upside, of course, but he ain't ready yet. Even though I do think that he could be a valuable piece maybe down the line. Right now, you're trying to fill in that gap right now. And bringing in these guys who either have upside, they are major league players. Clifford's not a major league player yet. You look at the rest of this market, the main guy that I would target in this scenario, trading for a first baseman. I think there's other guys out there. Maybe there's no name attached to it, but you also have it as 1 year of control. And then in free agency, you can take a shot at Vlad Jr. because it doesn't seem he's going to sign a contract at any time soon. Ryan Mountcastle is someone that I would consider. Another guy that you can look at, maybe Yandy Diaz. He's on the older side, though. There's guys who have control, guys who could possibly be rentals. Blade Tidwell, if that's the guy that you need to bring up, you need to get rid of. I understand the need for pitching in this organization. I get it. But there's also the thought of this. Yes, you have Juan Soto here, and you would like to fill in parts of your roster and remain flexible. I am willing to give up anyone that Brody Van Wegenen or Billy Epler drafted because I don't trust those guys at all. And I'm saying this straightforward. And yes, Brandon Sprode is one of those guys that Billy Epler drafted who I believe they should try to keep. That's the one exception there. But Jet Williams, I'm not high on. Luis Angel Acuna, you don't know where he fits into that conversation because Jeff McNeil's going to be here for the next 7 years. So, again, there's guys out there that like are attached to our other general managers where I'm like, okay, you know what? I want Stearns to build his own farm. I want him to grow his own crops. And again, I'm not saying that all these guys are just bad or whatever. Tong and McLean. I'm just saying, like, yeah, there are some good pieces there. I'm just saying that if it's somebody that David Stearns did not draft, did not bring in, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. The track record of these two, Brody Van Wegenen being attached to Brett Beatty. Brett Beatty has been a complete disappointment in the first round. Kevin Parada barely even exists anymore. Jet Williams keeps getting hurt. I mean, there are guys that they picked that I feel like are good upside or whatever. But if you are trading anyone that you didn't bring in here, I understand it. I get it. You know, I understand if they were willing to do that. And I'm not saying, I mean, there's a reason why those two do not have jobs in Major League Baseball anymore. And that's just putting a label on things. You never know. I'd say realistically, it would be one from the Mets top 10. If I were to make a guess, that would get you Torkelson. Would I prefer somebody like Mountcastle? Yes, I would, but we don't know if he's going to be made available. Maybe he does be made available because he is in a contract year. Andrew, I will go to you on that one. Do you think that this trade market is probably the best way to go and is probably the best way to look flexible, whether it is Torkelson or whether it is, Mountcastle, whether it is Diaz? Because again, you're not replacing Alonso. You already replaced Alonso's production. Ken, come to us. We already replaced him with Juan Soto, who's even better than Pete Alonso. He's a better hitter than Pete Alonso. You already replaced that production. You're not replacing Alonso. You're filling in first base.
Yeah, Mounty's weird because, again, they would like to free Kobe Mayo. I don't know how much more Kobe Mayo needs to be down in AAA, just hitting 400-foot, 450-foot nukes. Obviously, again, he had a small sample, and he struck out so damn much, and everyone wants to throw him off the bridge. But obviously, they have O'Hearn there, so that would be the platoon, is they'd like to get Mayo. And just a weird offseason for Baltimore. You would think, they have like young core. How about go spend at the top of the market? You lose Corbin Burns, and your replacements are Sugano, who's like 90 years old, and a guy, Charlie Morton, who's like 350. So they've had a weird offseason. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to move Mountcastle. Again, we heard some rumors about Mullins, and then that kind of went nowhere. So I do think Mike Elias would listen, and anyone smart would be looking at you as, hey, I'm not saying you're desperate, but you're looking for a fill of a need, so maybe you could be taken advantage of. I don't think David Stearns would be, but I would think Mike Elias is probably going to look for, hey, I want a pretty decent haul because, again, I'm playing from the strength where I know you guys don't have a first baseman. But I think, obviously, Yandy, the Rays, that seemed to be poo-pooed, but I think it was Martino or one of them probably poo-pooed that idea. And he's also older. So again, if I'm trying to find a first baseman, I'd rather go with the younger upside if it's Torque or Nolan Gorman. But, that's a different discussion. But again, if you're looking for, again, a league average or above average first baseman, Ryan Mountcastle hits that perfectly. And again, I do think he'd be available, but I think that maybe is a deadline thing where, again, let's say they're going to go into opening day with Theo Hearn and Mountcastle platoon. Kobe Mayo goes the first 2 months of April and May, hitting 415 homers in AAA, and they're going to be at no point of they have to get him up here. And then I think maybe you see kind of an Arise type when Arise got moved last year, maybe a mid-May, beginning of June type deal. I don't think they're going to move him, but again, I wouldn't put it past, especially how baseball free agency is moving so damn slow. We'll see. But I think he could be available. I just think that maybe is more of a deadline than it is now.
Addressing this type of thing at the deadline could be something that they do. Maybe Beatty is in the opening day lineup. You never know. But, when you look at it from this perspective that for some reason doesn't seem to get it, Ken saying 37 RBIs is a winner. Okay, let's play this game. All right, 37 RBIs. All right. That's about, 25 more runs batted in than Pete Alonso had in high leverage last year. Again, like when you're talking about it from upside, something that he could possibly do. And this isn't replacing him. This isn't replacing Alonso. Like we said, we already replaced Alonso. His production was replaced by one of the best hitters of this generation, possibly one of the best hitters to ever play this game in Juan Soto. You don't believe that? I don't know what to tell you. Upside. Yes, upside. Something that is upside. Yep, he's 25 years old, and as scouted, he had a 60 hit tool and a 70 power tool, because you already don't need to replace Alonso right now. You don't have to replace him. You just have to fill in first base. Two different things. Poll that we have here in the chat. For those of you who have not voted on it yet, let us know. 26% of you would target Mountcastle. 18% of you would target Yandy Diaz. 26% of you would also target Spencer Torkelson. 30% of you would go other, which I'm going to guess most of that other is throw $500 million at Pete Alonso, which is not going to happen.